You decide whether it's good news or bad news. And my show is kind of the anchor in prime time. And I'm going to deal with the things I've always dealt with. Real people talking about real challenges, looking for real solutions. But those have changed to include social issus, right?
No, she's got to ask you this question.
Yeah, I got to answer it because so they can't diagnose anybody, from afar. Somebody they haven't examined. Doctors, therapists, a lot of respected psychologists out there, really big time, big names, are saying that Donald Trump is showing signs of narcissism, which, by the way, one of the symptoms is preoccupied with the fantasies of unlimited power, success, and brilliance. And they're questioning that he has narcissistic disorder. Number one, do you think that's a mental illness, narcissism? And if so, is he fit to be president?
Things took a dramatic turn on The View when Joy Behar and Dr. Phil clashed. Joy wasted no time, labeling Donald Trump a classic narcissist and insisting that his actions matched every characteristic of the disorder. She supported her argument, with specific instances: his fixation on winning, craving for admiration, and inability to take responsibility. However, Dr. Phil quickly intervened, and it was clear he wasn't convinced. What happened next was a harsh dose of reality that left Joy fighting to maintain her poise. I found myself relating more to his perspective.
I was a little closer to him. I would have said, what is your problem?
Right.
But I didn't.
But you know what his problem
But
is.
my body language was, I'm not Joy Behar.
The debate kicked off when Joy passionately criticized Donald Trump, reiterating a claim she had made before, but this time armed with the DSM-5. She referenced psychologists, mental health experts, and even read directly from the DSM-5, arguing that Trump fits the precise criteria for narcissistic personality disorder. She had her evidence, highlighting his obsession with winning, his constant need for admiration, and his refusal to ever take responsibility. The panel was fully engaged. Sunny Hostin shared that she'd spoken to psychologists who agree with Joy's stance. Whoopi Goldberg provided her usual backing, signaling her support. Ana Navarro even chimed in, stating that these traits aren't just troubling, but harmful for a leader.
For me, the tragedy was the injustice, in my opinion.
Which part? Which injustice?
The criminal trial. The fact that he was not found guilty.
Oh.
Yeah. But he was found liable later,
Yes.
civilly.
Like Trump is found liable.
Yes, he was.
It's the same thing.
Everything goes back to Trump.
Until he's gone, I will not rest.
At this point, it seemed like another typical moment on The View targeting Trump. The audience was engaged, social media was buzzing, but then Dr. Phil stepped in and things took a sharp turn. In his calm and measured style, Dr. Phil didn't just respond, he deconstructed Joy's argument, addressing it piece by piece. He started by making one thing clear. Joy, I respect you, but let's be cautious here. There's a difference between showing narcissistic traits and being diagnosed with a full-blown personality disorder. He went on to explain that while Trump may exhibit some narcissistic behaviors, that doesn't necessarily mean he fits the clinical definition of NPD. Dr. Phil also pointed out that many successful individuals, business moguls, CEOs, even former presidents, show similar traits. High self-confidence, ambition, and resilience to criticism can seem like narcissism, but they don't automatically indicate a psychological disorder. And then he brought up the real concern.
People talk about narcissism, but they don't really know what it means. So I brought a list from the DSM-5 about what narcissism really is, because if I asked people to stand up and define it, they wouldn't know.
All right.
And let's just take a vote. One, has a grandiose sense of self-importance.
Check.
Check. Okay.
Next.
Two, is preoccupied with fantasies of success, power, or brilliance, which you said. Check. Okay. Three, believes that he or she is special or unique.
Check.
Can only be understood by special people. Four, requires excessive admiration.
Oh, check.
Has a sense of entitlement, which means is very thin-skinned.
Check.
The conversation took a sharp turn when Dr. Phil cautioned, when we start diagnosing political figures we don't like, we're treading on dangerous ground. Using psychology as a weapon to attack opponents is reckless. For a moment, the panel was left speechless. But of course, Joy Behar wasn't about to back down. She firmly stood her ground, insisting that Trump's actions went far beyond the typical traits of a leader. Come on, Dr. Phil, we're not just talking about confidence. This is a man who lies constantly, refuses to take accountability, and lashes out at anyone who challenges him. Dr. Phil wasn't done. He challenged Joy. If we're going to psychoanalyze politicians, why stop at Trump? Why not extend the same analysis to President Biden or other leaders? The room went quiet for a moment. Joy quickly responded, "Oh, come on, Phil. Biden has his flaws, but he doesn't spend his time bragging or attacking people on social media." The panel nodded in agreement, supporting her point. Dr. Phil wasn't about to let that go unnoticed. He pointed out the bias in the media, saying, "You know, Joy, the media tends to focus on one side while overlooking similar behaviors on the other. If we start cherry-picking traits for a diagnosis, we could label half of Washington, D.C." Then came the unexpected twist. Dr. Phil flipped the script on the View itself. Let's take a step back. If we're talking about narcissistic traits, how many of those apply to the people sitting at this table?
Saying no school children died of COVID?
I'm saying it was the safest group. They were the less vulnerable group, and they suffered and will suffer more from the mismanagement of COVID than they will from the exposure to COVID. And that's not an opinion, that's a fact.
Joy Behar didn't have an immediate response, and that's when the dynamic in the room completely shifted. Dr. Phil had steered the conversation into unexpected territory. He began ticking off the list of narcissistic traits, needing constant admiration, feeling superior, dismissing opposing views, and dominating conversations. Then he turned to the panel, asking, "You don't think any of this applies here just a little bit?" The atmosphere grew tense. Dr. Phil pointed out how The View often silences opposing opinions, encourages its audience to rally behind their views, and reacts harshly when challenged. He said, "You all have created a platform where the loudest voice wins, where disagreement gets drowned out. Tell me that doesn't match some of these traits?" At that point, Joy Behar was visibly upset, her frustration clear, and the back and forth was far from over. But just as things seemed to reach a boiling point, Judge Jeanine Pirro jumped in, bringing her own fire to the conversation.
Your opening statement, which was how horrible it is, that Donald Trump is talking about
that's
all
what you,
of these
I'm
people.
sorry,
You know what I
that's
think
what you
is
said.
horrible?
You said,
But you know
you
what's
said
horrible?
that
When
it
people
was,
who
it's
shouldn't
okay.
be here
It's-
end up children of American citizens.
You know what?
Judge Jeanine wasted no time jumping in to defend Trump, pushing back hard against Joy's comments. "You want to talk about narcissism? Let's talk about results," she began, firmly stating that if you're going to judge someone's character, you need to focus on what they've actually accomplished, not just how they speak. She highlighted Trump's history of private philanthropy, his donations, charitable work, and his efforts to help people behind the scenes. In her view, people love to paint him as a selfish villain, but how many knew he had quietly helped countless individuals without drawing attention to it? Then, Judge Jeanine shifted the conversation. If we're going to talk about generosity, let's make a fair comparison. Look at the Obamas. How much of their wealth has actually gone to everyday Americans? Or are they just cashing in on Netflix deals and book advances while lecturing the rest of us? The public's perception started to shift again. What began as a debate about Trump's personality had now turned into an argument over who truly gives back versus those who merely talk about it. The tension was palpable. Whoopi tried to steer things back, arguing that philanthropy doesn't negate personality flaws. Sunny Hostin chimed in, claiming that Trump's donations didn't cancel out his controversies. Meanwhile, Judge Jeanine held her ground, insisting that Trump had done more for working-class Americans than the political elite ever had. The room was electric, passionate, fiery, and deeply divided. Whether you agreed with the points being made or not, one thing was certain. This was one of The View's most explosive debates in a long time.
Questioning, why is Dr. Phil there? What is
Because
Dr.
it is
Phil
now
doing
a
there?
reality show. This is the new reality show. And I'm
show you
hoping
why he
that
was
we
there.
can put music behind this.
Yes.
Because it's only going to be a matter of weeks before we start to see.
Great idea.
I mean, just folks showing up. What is going on?
By the time everything calmed down, one thing was clear. This debate wasn't just about Trump. It was about hypocrisy and the risks of acting as armchair psychologists. Dr. Phil pointed out a significant flaw in the media's habit of diagnosing public figures for the sake of convenience. He highlighted the selective outrage and double standards that often dominate political discussions. Joy, though visibly shaken, wasn't about to give up her stance. But whether she acknowledged it or not, the conversation had evolved into something much larger. The debate on media bias, political narratives, and who gets to decide who's at fault was now front and center. Now it's your turn to weigh in. Was Dr. Phil right to challenge Joy's argument, or do you agree with the View on this one? Did Judge Janine make a solid point, or did she miss the mark? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to stay up to date on the latest celebrity news, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. We've got all the tea, and you don't want to miss a drop.